Well, joining me now from our studio in Parliament is Jane Patterson, our political editor. Jane, why now? This is a pretty aggressive move.
The Prime Minister has said that there is a very small window that New Zealand has to get on top of the virus and stop any further spread. They clearly believe there is community transmission now in New Zealand, and the Prime Minister said that medical modelling that the Cabinet received today was that if they didn't act now without these measures, tens of thousands of New Zealanders could die. She is still issuing hope in terms of that if people take the rules seriously, if they do what they're being told or asked to, then New Zealand may avoid some of the outbreaks that we're seeing overseas. But that is by no means a given, as we have the next 48 hours to prepare to go into full lockdown.
It is an extraordinary situation. So what do we know about the conversations that were had in that Cabinet meeting, how much information they had to make those decisions, and whether they were all on the same page?
Look, I think it would have been a combination of obviously the official advice that they got in those two cases in Auckland and Wairarapa that were now treated as community transmission would have been one trigger. The other information that they would have been heeding was, of course, the spread. What do they need to do? And we now had the level system, level 3 to level 4, that would lay out exactly what the response should be. And of course, we've had a huge amount of debate from the medical community, from other politicians about what New Zealand needed to do. Now, Cabinet Ministers can't be swayed by that completely, otherwise they'd never be able to make a decision. But there was certainly a very strong call, even this morning, yesterday, and really intensifying this morning, especially with that open letter from the doctors saying we must move now to contain it. So they had about a 2-hour Cabinet meeting. We've also just had a briefing, as you played, from the senior police officers now in charge of that side of things, and some details coming out there about what transport might look like. Lots of questions to them, very practical questions. For example, if people don't have a car and rely on public transport to get to the supermarket or to the pharmacy, that will still be available to them, but only for those essential services. So there are lots of little fish hooks here that people are going to have to figure out how it applies to them over the next 48 hours.
And obviously, as you're talking about there, significant consequences, but just in the most simple way, that everything is going to have to shut up shop, bar those essential services. So in combination with this announcement, we had Grant Robertson, bolstering the business package. To what extent?
It's almost doubled in terms of that wage subsidy, which was one of the key elements of the package that was announced last week. Initially, the package had been at $5 billion, and that was basically would cover fully businesses with about 21 employees. Now, other businesses could have applied for the money, but they would have only had about 20 employees covered. So a lot of larger or medium businesses wouldn't have been able to benefit from it at all. Going into a fully 4-week and potentially longer lockdown, huge implications for people's incomes, and the government's main priority is making sure that people have some kind of income and, of course, avoiding a complete economic collapse. So that business support part, the wage subsidy, has gone from $5 billion to $9.3 billion. The cap has been lifted. All businesses are eligible, including those self-employed. And there are some other important things going on along the side. There's a lot of work going on with banks so that people who are going to be struggling with rental mortgages might be able to get some help in that area. Rent increases, there's been a freeze put on that. So really the government trying to look at every single element of where people might really struggle and say, here's some help. And Mr Robertson did say there will be further measures as well as we proceed through the coming weeks.
Just quickly before we go, in practical terms, what does this actually mean for the operation of Parliament?
So Parliament will resume on Wednesday, and basically it's just going to come together to pass essential business. Now, one of those is an epidemic notice that the Prime Minister has to issue to be able to put these powers in force, and also some crucial legislation that keeps the money flowing, that will enable them to get this money for the support package through. Parliament will adjourn on Wednesday once that business has been done, and then it is adjourned indefinitely. We do not have a resumption date for Parliament as yet.
Thanks, Jane. That is our political editor, Jane Patterson.